What's up, guys? Thanks so much for stopping by the channel again today. We are starting off our series of faction reviews and domain reviews here for Birthright and the Western Coast in particular here. And we're starting off today again with the sort of the main NPC kingdom in the area, and that is Boeruine, one of the two sort of main or top dogs for contending for the Iron Throne, the other one being Avenel, but they're located in the Heartlands. In some ways, is almost like a not to put like a Game of Thrones spin on it, which ironically also is, has the Iron Throne, of course, but this is almost like these guys are more like Starks, I would say, in some ways, to Avenel, somewhat Lannister-like, just in very broad terms, nothing specific, and again, not really meant to draw direct comparison between the two, but these guys are a little bit, the Western Coast nations are going to be a little bit rougher, and more frontier-like than the more civilized or populated areas of the Heartlands. But that's about where we'll leave the comparison there. Anyway, Boeruine, so it is lawful neutral overall, not available for PCs. Basically, this is, again, one of the main NPC kingdoms, and essentially, in many ways, influences every other nation and domain on the Western Coast. And a fairly large kingdom at that, with 9 provinces, and in various states of sort of development. So there's the more frontier-like areas, generally at level 3 there, and then the much more populated areas at level 6 there, Rivian, Sea's Edge, and Terrien. So there's still a lot of magical potential here. There's still a lot of untamed land, so plenty of room to go adventuring as well. Sort of out in the wilds. The law here is 100% controlled by Eric Boeruine. There is not even a hint of a contender here. He wouldn't tolerate it in either case, and he does extend some of his law or influence into some of his neighbors as well. More specifically, his at least nominal ally Telanie to the north, which we'll get to soon. On the religious side, it's a little more intricate. You have the hidden temple of Kuraikin, run by Linnaeus Bacheri. I'm not sure how we're going to pronounce his name. You have, let's see here, the Northern Imperial Temple of Halen, run by Thurian Donalds. That is the ruler of Telanie. And that is essentially the main contentions there. So the Northern Imperial Temple does have significant holdings in your country, as do those of Kuraikin. It's about roughly even between the two there. We'll get into more detail in just a sec there. On the guild side, again, you have a lot going on as well. So you have Arian Borthane running the Boeruine Trading Guild itself. So one of the few instances here where there's sort of a guild run essentially in the name of that nation itself. So you have that, but then there are also there's Galen Thuriad of the Upper Annuir Traders, and Storm Holston of the Stjordvik Traders, and we'll cover him in much more detail when we get into the northern marches, just because he has influence. Much more influence up there, but so he has he has extended his holdings all the way down here as well, and in many ways is an intricate figure. But we'll cover that more, like I said, in the northern marches, but then also when we eventually get around to reviewing all the Rurik domains. On the source side, it's basically all one, and that is Arlen Innis. Or sorry, not Arlen Innis, or is it? Give me a second here. Not sure if they mentioned that properly there. No, just Arlen Innis. Yeah, sorry. They didn't mention any specific other names with it. So on the law side, Eric Boeruine, the Archduke of the domain, owns all the law. No one else has even a holding 0 right. He wouldn't tolerate it. The Northern Imperial Temple of Halen and the Hidden Temple of Kuraikin struggle over the spirits of his people. The two faiths have strive particularly vehemently this far north and anywhere, and bloodshed has actually broken out between the two ostensibly good-aligned religions, so let that sink in for a second, too. And again, Northern Imperial Temple is run by the current female head of the church there, who also is the ruler of Telanie to the north, which you could play as. So that could be an interesting dynamic there, because Boeruine certainly wields a lot of influence over you, but you also have that influence on the religious hearts of a lot of his population. On the guild side, guilders Galen Thuriad of Dosone, Stormholson of Stjordvik, and Arian Borthane of Boeruine control each of the rival guilds of Boeruine. Since the Archduke keeps Borthane under his thumb, his laws and tariffs naturally favor the local guildmaster. The other two keep hanging on despite doing their best to wring the last drop of coin from the land before Boeruine's laws evict them for good. So you can always play that in your favor if you. I guess the DM would be playing this in their favor in dealings with you. But we'll cover the other guilds in more detail again as we get towards the end of our West Coast reviews. But nonetheless, it is, interesting there that the Boeruine can even wield that kind of influence in the guild activity there, and play that off against, or play them all off against each other, but while still kind of keeping the guild activity from in any way, shape, or form finding ways to influence the political goings-on of the country. So he just straight up won't tolerate it. Whereas we saw a lot in the southern coast nations as we reviewed them, that a lot of the guilders in many ways are sort of influence or impacting, or can impact, things that are going on politically there as well, and in some cases even religiously. So here that's definitely a totally different situation. So on the source side, the mage Arlen Innis controls the magic of Boeruine, and the Archduke controls the mage. Innis allows Boeruine to protect his sources against the influence of Darian Avon's insidious pet mage, the Count of Tagus, just to the south. Innis wishes to expand his control beyond Boeruine, but the Archduke hesitates to allow him that power, so there could be some potential friction there. So just some things to keep in mind as well. Should you find yourself in the country and encounter these things. Regency, though, and again, Boeruine's a powerhouse. He's got 91 generates 91, and it has already 100 accumulated. Treasury, well in excess of 150 gold bars, which basically, I think, in this setting at least, come out to essentially 2,000 gold pieces each. So, that's quite a bit there. Boeruine also has the third largest army in Anawir. Only those of Gore and Avenel surpass this western force, but he maintains a stance of war readiness at all times in the face of threats presented by the Manslayer, the Five Peaks, and Avan's armies in Tagus. So he has 4 units of archers, 2 of artillerists, 4 infantry, 3 elite infantry, 3 knights, 3 pikemen, and 3 scouts. So that being said, you have your nominal ally Talanier to the north, although they don't have a large army themselves. But your at least his armies are kind of occupied in many different areas. He's got to protect some of his borders against Rove, the southern border with Tagus, which again would be his main avenue to, if he actually wanted to openly fight against Avenel, but Avenel does have the larger army, so that's also kind of what keeps him in check, but kind of also protecting the rest of his eastern and northern border there against what borders on the Five Peaks there. That being said, that could be an interesting path towards expansion for him at some point, and something you as players would have to keep in mind, depending on what the DM would decide to do if, again, you're in this area, and what they might want to do with Boeruine. You might even, if you're just venturing in Boeruine, you might find yourself in the military forces there, which could, again, lead to some interesting role-playing opportunities in the service of the country. So the regent himself is a pretty big badass. He's a level 12 fighter, very major bloodline, level 60. So again, one of the reasons why he is one of the major contenders for the Iron Throne is because he does have that strong of a bloodline. So he numbers amongst the most powerful of Anawir's current rulers. He claims to be born of a derivation of Roll's bloodline, making him the heir to the Iron Throne. As the other claimants of the Iron Throne dispute his genealogy, the Archduke has little hope of taking the much-coveted Iron Throne peacefully. But he doesn't really care. His strong bloodline boosts his surpassing faith in his destiny, and the Archduke feels content to carve an empire for himself with sword as with a diplomatic pen. So he uses kingly edict or knightly steel to topple those who would stand in his way, considering his rise to the Iron Throne paramount. Good and law will arise from this ascension, he knows. So the regent won't wait much longer before making a bold move toward the imperial city. Already he seeks to claim the throne of Avenel. Obviously, Avenel has different ideas when it comes to that. A firm believer in reciprocation, so he always repays a favor done to him, which could be worth keeping in mind and impressing upon adventurers in the area, but also any harm done to him as well, no matter what the cost. So he is essentially a vindictive ruler there. So few would willingly cross him, and those that have regret it. He treats his people in the same spirit of fairness, so answering their needs with laws. He taxes them moderately, but does demand absolute loyalty in return for that. So he does have lieutenants who are actually regents in their own right. So he has the Mage Innis, again, just a level 7 wizard, which is still pretty solid in this setting. And Guildmaster Arian, level 3 thief, who's actually not evil, chaotic neutral there. Each have their own domains, but swear fealty to him. He doesn't care how they get their tasks done, just as long as they do it. And they do resent his heavy-handed rule, but they do realize that, there's no sort of working against him, so working for him is the best ways to basically help themselves. So, but there could be potential points of friction there that could be exploited. Again, if you were growing the pair of steel balls, essentially, to think about in some way trying to degrade and sort of form some sort of plan of attempting to take on Boeruine if you were like a neighboring kingdom or something, or domain. You have your work cut out for you, but there are some chinks in the armor that you might be able to exploit. Other important NPCs, so the commander of his army in the province of Redoubt is Lien Charrier, or Carrier. So he's an 8th level middle-aged general, but built like a barrel, basically serving the Boeruines all his life. No one's ever questioned his devotion, but he does feel some of the pressure of his heritage, so his elf grandfather, who serves Rove Manslayer, has asked him to lead a force of elf brigands into the very heart of the province, so that could, again, be one of those chinks in the armor. On a description side of the country, so 9 provinces contain only 3 terrain types: plains, hills, and forest. The wind shears the coastal plains, but locals still raise herds of cattle and sheep there. The folk pretend to sophistication and fervently support their monarch above all others in his bid for the Iron Throne. One might think they fear outsiders, and so they certainly don't take kindly to those who don't support their liege. So you might want to watch what you say if you're adventuring there. The capital of Boeruine is Sea's Edge, and the castle of Sea Harrow has marked the port for hundreds of years. So sailors come from across the continent to this busy harbor. So again, on the economic side, that's certainly good for you as well. Trade goods, so roads crisscross the kingdom, allowing traders to carry wood, fish, and grain to the distant corners of the land. Boeruine's trade routes run from Sea Harrow to Annawir and Ilion even, and roads connect the seaports to the other provinces. So again, in that sense, very well developed, and the roads obviously would serve a secondary purpose of allowing armies to move faster too. So Telenier has declared Boeruine the rightful ruler of Avenel, but commits no troops or gold to the Archduke's cause. Alamier has allied itself cautiously with Boeruine, but only in the matter containing the goblin tribes of the Five Peaks. And if you were actually playing as Alamier, that could be an interesting way for you to either maybe gain more favor with Boeruine, but you do have to be careful with all your other neighbors, and certainly you're closer to Avenel than Boeruine in that sense, so that could cause repercussions there. The ruler of Alamier remains too canny a politician to declare an alliance with Boeruine openly, and Tornin's regent dares not, stuck as he is between the two powers. So again, more things to consider there. Especially if you were playing again in Alamier or Tornin. You're definitely Tornin, you're stuck in a tough spot, but we'll get to that when we get to the Heartlands. Enemies, so the most vocal is, of course, Darian Avan, Prince of Avenel. The Archduke hungers for Avan's blood and position, and the prince seeks to extirpate his most powerful enemy. Allies of Avan, or those who force under his rule, likewise oppose Boeruine's claims to the Iron Throne. So those include Tagas and marginally Brosingay on the western coast, as well as other kingdoms far enough away to offer Avan only coin and moral aid. So some things to consider there. So you have no shortage of enemies if you, again, you're not playing as this country, but things to consider if it were known that you, as an adventurer potentially, or ruler, were affiliated with Boeruine, or certainly declared yourself openly there. So that would obviously paint a target on your back with other nations. Some of the special conditions here too. So one reason the Archduke has not already swept across anywhere is that Rove Manslayer's domain is kind of right in the middle of that, in your southeast corner. So defeating him would make your route to conquest far clearer. The attentions of the elf remain always a factor in troop movements in the region. The Archduke considers him a personal enemy, as the Manslayer has tried several times to take his life and bloodline power. But not only has the regent proved too wily for the elf's assassins, he has nearly brought down the Anshe himself. Fortunately, Rove hates the other human kingdoms equally, and so he spreads his attention out. But again, that's definitely a great point of adventuring and possibility there. Whether you're, again, just playing, adventuring in the country, or a different ruler, and again come into contact with Boeruine. So certainly being able to maybe uncover some of those plots that we looked at in our intro to the Western Coast and point that towards the Manslayer would certainly maybe focus Boeruine's attentions, and if any big successes there could certainly again earn you that respect, and he, as it says, he repays kindness very well, so that could certainly help you there. And if you were to uncover a plot, perhaps that one general of yours is actually planning on aiding them, aiding Rove, that could certainly cause some chaos in the kingdom as well. Or that could be a plot that you're maybe one of Boeruine's enemies has come to know of and is trying to maybe cause that rift in the country, and you maybe help that or uncover that or solve that. That again could lead to some interesting opportunities in Boeruine as well. So again, you're not playing as this country, but there's a lot going on here right under the surface. So in many ways, it looks like he does have kind of complete and absolute authority, but again, there are some interesting chinks in the armor that would make, I think, for some great role-playing opportunities as well. So that being said, worth knowing about, certainly, because this country definitely dominates the Western Coast. So let us know in the comments, guys, what your experiences have been adventuring in and around Boeruine, or just in actual campaigns or anything. What have you found works well, or is maybe an obstacle when dealing with Boeruine? How have those experiences gone in your games? Let us know in the comments, guys. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks so much for checking us out again today. Hope you guys stay safe. Take care, and we'll see you in the next one.